I knew that was going to happen as well. I was going to warn you. No, not that. Abort, let's restart. Okay, great. Can I? Oh, but you got to get me down in the corner so the online audience can see.
Fixing you.
Okay. Welcome to CocoaHeads 189. Thank you everyone for coming. Woo, great. We don't have to clap early. In the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. Great. We have some great talks tonight. Amy delves, a conversation with your doctor strike through, and then health data. I don't actually know how I read that, but that's what we're going with. And then we also have Carlos Alegrito. Great. Prototyping with play. Looking forward to those. Code of conduct. So basically, we want people to have fun here and feel welcome. So if you see anyone sort of being harassed or uncomfortable, let either myself, Bok, Tups, Baz isn't here, but normally you can let Bruno know. There's also an online form. You can leave an anonymous sort of note down there, melbournecocoaheads.com, code of conduct with hyphens in between. Great. Housekeeping. If you need to go to the toilets, go outside past the elevators and to the right, and there's toilets there. If we need to escape quickly, same direction, just opposite the toilets. Awesome. Questions. Because there's also an online audience, we ask that you save your questions till the end, unless the presenter sort of directly asks you, and then you don't have to be quiet, you can answer questions, and we'll go around with microphones. If anyone's got any sort of suggestions on how I can distribute the microphone less awkwardly, let me know later. Great. Thank you to our sponsors, our gold sponsor, Mantle Group. We couldn't do it without you. Everyone put a round of hands together. Great. And also keep it going for REA Group. Thank you. Some other events going on this month. A coding night on the 17th of September. That's next Wednesday. It's just a joint thing we do with Google Developer Group and Flutter and some other groups maybe. Bring your laptop, code along. There's some people to help you. I'll be there. Steve will be there. Yeah, great. Also, social night on Tuesday, the 30th of September.
I'll definitely be there.
Yep, great. That's Brick Lane Brewery still. Is that? Yep, great. It might be sunny that night. Maybe. I promise you it will be sunny that night. There is something else going, which I'm going to handball the Tups. Dev Fest. I did this slide last minute. Pretty happy with it. Great. And he's going to come up. Maybe I'll delay a little bit. Come up in front of the camera. Yeah, that's it. Come on, Tups. Because he's taller.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Doing this on behalf of GDG Melbourne. So GDG Melbourne is the Google Developer Group, so everything Google. They have on Saturday the 4th of October, they hold DevFest at REA. It's a community-run event, so for all of those of you that were at DevWorld, very similar feel to it. A great day. They have 2 streams of talks. It's not all about AI. So it covers the whole spectrum of Google stuff. So there's 3 or 4 talks about Android. There's talks about Google Cloud, all sorts of other stuff. Yeah, great event. Well worth coming. I think the tickets are still $60. As you get closer to the event, if you have buyer's remorse and you realise it's the 2nd of October and you'd really like to go, it'll probably cost you way more than $60. So it basically ramps up right at the end as they start running out of tickets. But if you're interested, great day. We also have, we'll probably do it at the end of the night, we'll give away a ticket to DevFest, so GDG Melbourne, and these are the folk that run our coding night with us. So we get on very well with them. if you're interested, have a think about it. We'll have some. We're going to devise some way of giving away a ticket as a raffle type thing, but only to those people who are actually going to go. So
maybe post in the Slack. That was the game plan,
yeah.
right? Just go on Melbourne Meetup and post. Are you fine with that? Yeah, I'll post. Bok will post. You put an emoji or something next to it. Yep, great. If you're interested. Awesome. Thank you, Tups. And GDG. Awesome. All right, and we like to support our friends and family. Sydney CocoaHeads. I did have to add the Brisbane one. Who told me that earlier today? Yep, you're right. So GDG Melbourne, all the CocoaHeads groups with Australia and New Zealand are at aunz.cocoaheads.social. Please scan that QR code. Great. How to find us specifically, go to melbournecocoaheads.com, jump on our Slack, and you can post to us on Mastodon. Great. I think that's all. No questions? Great. If you jump on Slack and want to find out about tonight's event, go to Melbourne-Meetup or -Meetup. If you want to help out with these nights, jump on Melbourne-Volunteers. Really appreciate it. You can even jump up here and do what I'm doing. It's not as hard as I make it look. If you're looking for work or looking for people to work, jump on #jobs. That's around all of Australia and New Zealand as well, right? Cool. And then if you want to present, or actually, if you want people to present and offer suggestions, jump in speakers. Really, really looking forward to that stuff. I think I've done my part of the evening. I'm going to throw it over to Amy Delves with a conversation with your, Dr. No, health data. Is that fine? Okay, thank you, Amy. I should ask you stylistically how you wanted it to be presented. HDMI.
Yep, that's it. Okay, we're back for another month. For those that don't know me, hi, I'm Amy. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm going to be talking about a conversation with your health data. For those that were around for DevWorld last week, this is the same talk, just slightly different because it's a different crowd and I don't actually memorize anything, so it'll be slightly different. Yeah, cool. First off, any conversation about health must be inclusive of trans rights, which is just common sense, so keep that in mind. Taking a look at what is being built, so all of this is stemming out from an app that I'm working on in my spare time called Health Kitty. No cat pictures, unfortunately, but Health Kitty is a conversational and accessible way of interacting with your health data. For those that, like me, are complete and utter nerds, it is HealthKit being the framework and TTY being the abbreviation for teletype. So, Health Kitty, let's go. Ethics in AI usage is the hot topic for a lot of people these days, particularly when it comes to health data. So the short of it is never send your health data anywhere. Keep it all on your device. Good thing about using foundation models and as a way of having AI, as horrible as that term is, access to your health data is it all remains on device. So you're not sharing it with anyone. You're not invading anyone's privacy or anything like that. So, yep, never share your health data. Cool. Now to get into the context of the talk, what's going to happen is I'll go through a bit about what foundation models is and do this as a couple of worked examples and look at how we can then incorporate all of this stuff from HealthKit into providing the answers as part of foundation models and producing a nice response back to the user. So let's answer a question. That question is going to be, what is my heart rate? Fairly simple to understand in that you're wanting a value that's a point in time and something that, is helpful. So first thing we are going to do is we're going to be defining the session. The session is your main interaction with foundation models, and it will look something like this. So here we are just setting up an instance of the session. The model we're providing is default. Now, a lot of the magic happens in this thing called tools. Tools allow you to bring in all of your extra data from outside of foundation models and its known context into how it knows about everything, which is pretty cool. I'll go into more technical depth in a bit. You've also got your instructions. Your instructions are the sort of your global definitions of how the AI, bad term, I know, how the AI will respond, as in its tone of voice and stuff like that. So let's have a look at the instructions. I'm deliberately going pretty fast here because last week it was a 40-minute talk, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions at the end. So here, this is just setting up some instructions. It is making use of a type called an instruction builder. The instruction builder is just there so you can put in a whole heap of sentences or even some conditional logic around what forms the instructions. As I mentioned before, the instructions are going to be your global or overall interactions with the model, so your tone of voice and stuff like that. The next thing you want to look at is the prompt. So your prompt typically is your your interactions between the user and the AI itself. So this will look something like this. Here you've got prompt builder there, which will allow you to construct your prompt from a whole heap of sentences and conditional logic. Main things it's doing here is it's going, I want to know about these health types, I want to know well-being, dates, and focus it on asking a particular question from the user. So this is what we have. It is all of this here. So we've seen creation of the session, we've seen the instructions, which are your global definitions, we've seen the prompt, which is your interaction between your app and the AI. Now let's look at a tool. A tool is part of what's called, well, in the broader AI sense, you've got this thing called Model Context Protocol, or MCP. That is a way of AIs interacting with other bits of data, other providers of information. They can be API calls, they can be documents, they can be whatever you want. They get provided back via a tool. How it looks in foundation models is going to be something like this. This is horribly condensed, but what it is it's setting up a name and a description. The name is how you call this tool from your instructions or your prompts. You've then got a whole heap of arguments, which is the data that gets passed into your tool from the AI. In my context, those arguments will typically be things like what health information, what date ranges, and stuff like that. And then after all of that, it's got a call function. The call function is what handles the fetching of the data from something else and returning it in a type that the AI can understand. Type here in Swift is some prompt representable, which is a type that will be convertible to a JSON format. JSON tends to be the format that gets used as communication between in things like MCP. So your tools, that output is expected to be in JSON. Let's take a look at how we define the arguments. So when you're interacting with an AI, you're typically trying to have it interpret and understand a sentence. In this first example, it is, what is my heart rate? So the arguments would focus on the different bits of information there. So it'll go, okay, heart rate, that's a bit of health information. I will associate it with, sorry, I'll associate it with one of these arguments, and then if it's like yesterday, today, last month, stuff like that, it can associate it there, and other bits of information you want to be passing along. Now, these arguments are marked with the generable macro, and this is a bit of sort of magic syntax, to call it that, but it is a way of getting a type to be understood by foundation models, and it is used for things like your arguments. It is also used for any of your output from your tool if you're wanting to output a object rather than a raw string. I'll get into that in a bit as well. So in our definitions here, we've got the properties themselves. All of the properties are also marked with this thing called guide. Now, what a guide is a way of helping the AI determine what bits of information in your prompt are associated with a particular property. Here's some examples. We've got just one with the description, and that is going from a string to a particular type. In this case, health type is an enum. That enum is marked with generable, which again, magic syntax, but that's what allows it all to work together. Unfortunately, a lot of this AI stuff is very much magic syntax, but it all works and it produces a nice result. Second example is when you can say this particular property should be any of these following bits of the prompt, and you can provide those there as well. Here we're looking at those strings and putting it into that property if it's found. You can also look at, say, ranges if you're looking for a numerical input. So all of this stuff is pretty cool. Prompt representable is your output from the tool call. This will be the way that you send back your data from the tool call to the AI, so it can then generate its own output. Here it can be something like a string. It can also be a type that is marked with generable. This is what a string response will look like, where you just go, you did 3 workouts today. How you get to that 3 is business logic inside the tool, but you can do that, or you can just play fun and games with the user and return whatever output you want. Another option is your generable response. So here we're providing a more structured bit of data to the AI so it then can know what particular values mean and stuff like that. Cool. Okay, hopefully that's all made sense and not too high level, but let's see what it's going to look like when we start pulling in the data from HealthKit into that tool and returning it to the user. So we need to look at HealthKit. As with any health data, first thing we need to do is ask the user for permission to actually read that data. So all of this, because it's health related, permission and consent and all that stuff is super, super important. What you want to do is you want to prompt the user and get back an idea of, has the user been prompted for access to this particular type, which will be, yes, it's been prompted. You can also see whether it should request, as in it's something that has not yet been requested, or it's unknown. How do we then prompt the user? Well, we get this very nice function on view in SwiftUI, which will allow us to do that. Here we're providing an instance of HK Store, which is our access into all of the HealthKit provided data. We're also saying, please allow us to share these types. Another set, which is your read types, and then the trigger is a binding to a bool value, so that once and when that value goes to true, we present this sheet to the user. Cool. So we've now presented the user with a sheet saying, please give us access. What can we determine from here? Well, we know whether we've prompted the user for access, but we don't actually know whether there is data there or whether they have granted us access or not. So we need to do a few more checks, which is something like this, where for each of the types we can do a very short query on HealthKit to go, do we have any data available for, say, the last week? If we do, then we know that we've got data there. If we don't, then all we can know is that we've requested it. We don't quite know whether we've got access to it or not. So that's what happens with things like, do we have data or no access? It's a bit can't really determine it, so we just have to make our best guess. A lot of the types within HealthKit are relating to this idea of an HK object type, which is a base type in Objective-C and Swift, and that sort of identifies what all of these types of data can be. Here's a few of the more concrete ones. So you can look at, say, a category type. A category type could be something like your sleep data. A quantity type is typically what you will use day to day, because you're dealing with quantity samples, as in this is a particular value of a thing at a moment in time. If you're looking at things like your document types, then, or your clinical types, you're starting to deal more with clinical documents, which are slightly more different. So when you're requesting data from HealthKit, you need to be aware of what type of the data it is, and that's what HK object type allows for. The predicates. So when you construct a query, you need to define what you're searching for, and that's where predicates come in. A lot of these are from Objective-C days, so they are relating to NS predicate, but we're starting to see the use of Swift types a bit more as well. And here is what it will look like. So you can, your first predicate you tend to define is for your start and your end dates. And you go, give me a predicate for a sample type over this date range. And then you go, okay, I actually want a quantity sample. You provide it the type itself and that initial predicate, and that'll give you our predicate for searching for our quantity between a start date and an end date. Salt descriptors. So because health data is typically relating to points in time, you want to make sure that the data you get back is sorted. So you define something like this, where you go, here is my descriptor. It is looking at the end date property on HK sample. HK sample is the base type that provides you start and end date. And then you're saying, okay, everything will go forward from the end date value. Query descriptors is how you will be interacting with your health store. So all of your data, this is what it would look like. Your sample query descriptor is taking one or more predicates, one or more sort descriptors, and also limit in there. So you can go, if I'm only after the most recent value, you can limit it by start and end date. You can limit it, you can sort it based on end date using sort descriptor, and then you provide a value of 1, which will be your most recent. From the descriptor, you just go, give me the results on this store. Because of the magic between Objective-C and Swift, you can get all of these nice Swift concurrency outputs from it. So you just go, hey, I'll wait for the result, throw any errors, and that's how it works. The data itself, so this is now when we're dealing with samples. As mentioned before, HK sample is your base sample, so this will give you your start date and your end date. It'll also give you a sample type. So your sample type can be something like a category sample or a quantity sample. And that then allows you to determine what all of these bits of data are going to be and how they can be used. Your quantity sample will, it's a subclass of sample, and it will give you things like your quantity type and the actual value itself. It's returning a quantity object. The reason it does that rather than a double or an int is because you need to deal with unit conversion. So unit conversion is important because here in Australia we might deal with a particular value for, say, distance, speed, even things like blood glucose. All of that is in one particular value. Over in America, it's a different unit. So by using HK quantity, we can then switch between those based on what the user's preference is. Category sample is slightly different in that you will get a start and end date via HK sample, but here your integer value is the actual category itself. When you're dealing with sleep data, this will be stuff like your core, your deep, your REM, and any times you've woken up in the evening will be part of, will be a value passed into the value here, and then by looking at start and end dates, you can determine how long was someone in deep sleep for, core sleep, stuff like that, which is all pretty cool. So you can get a lot of information out of health kit like this. Looking at the tool implementation itself, so this is how you start to tie all of your data back into foundation models. You do something like this, so you want to grab all of your quantities, you want to look for a particular value you want, like your most recent. You could also look for, say, the average value, maximum, minimum, stuff like that. Then you get the value as a numerical, say a double. You do that by going, give me the double for a particular unit. Good thing about HealthKit is you can actually query it and go, what is the user's default value for this particular type, and get that back. And then you construct a string from it, or your object or whatever you're returning from that tool call, so that foundation models can use it. Using it in the session itself, here you're just setting up the session with some instructions. You're doing a prompt, which is the straight question from the user, and you're returning the output. So that response will have content there, which is the generated content from foundation models. So it'll be, the response will be something like, hey, good news, your heart rate was 70 beats per minute at this time, or something like that. Which, hey, it's really good for the user to know that. It's very friendly, very engaging as well. Bonus round, I'll quickly skim through. When you look at something like this, it becomes a lot more complex, because you're now wanting to go, okay, here's a particular statistic, and also here is a date range. Yesterday, so any AI model has a very bad concept of what the current time is, or what relative time is. So you need to do something like this, where you are grabbing your string and then going, okay, which of all of these possible values is it? Because it's time and it's all made up, you then need to go, okay, give me start and end date for this value, and away you go. Looking at something like the maximum, because all different health types are different, you want to have some idea of, for what you're asking about, is the value going to be an average? Is it going to be a sum of everything? How do I want to treat this data? So you need to put all of that logic into your app, and away you go. Heart rate, well, that's just a term matching to a string that we then match to an object type. HealthKit query, well, what we've seen from before is that this is just a bunch of samples, and we can query it like this. Data output, this gets super contextual, because do you want to output a string, do you want to output an array, or do you want to provide a custom type in there? All of these have different advantages and disadvantages based on what you're trying to build. Building out a complete response, so you can, we saw this a bit before, where we construct the session, the prompt, and all of that. But you then need to do UI around it. You need to do things like handling errors. So what if we don't find any data? What if we hit a guardrail or something like that? So it's just errors all the way down. So we need to match particular errors. We can look at things like the is this something that's an error from the tool? Is it something that's an error from the session? And work with it that way. One thing we do need to worry about is the context window of the session, which is limited to 4096. And quite often when you're dealing with health data, you will get exceeds context window size because you're just trying to return too much data. So you need to then go, okay, let's construct another session that has all of my existing instructions plus instructions built from all of this output data and go from there. One thing to avoid with your tools is trying to make them too complex. So if you say put 5 arguments in there, the model will have a bit of a tough time trying to understand it all. So try to infer as much as you can, try and split out what you can. So if you know, say, your well-being is going to be substantially different from other forms of health, split that out into its own tool. If you know your workout data is going to have a series of different arguments, again, split that out and away you go. Wrapping it all up, so you then just want to bring it all back together, which is how it works, how you enjoy it all, provide a nice UI, and yeah, that's it. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Seriously, no questions? Oh.
There seemed to be a lot of logic you had there for working out like the maximum and stuff. What benefit were you getting from the foundation models that couldn't be done by the AI as such?
Okay, so question was around, do you want your AI, your generative model to be determining maximum, or do you want to be providing the value itself? You want to be providing the value itself because as good as the generative models are, they really can't do math. So they will struggle a lot. They will try to do math, but they could go, oh, your total was this value, which are pulled out of your response, but that might be a completely unrelated value. So you want to do all of that sort of comparison and maths yourself because you can unit test it, you know it works, you know what the response is going to be, and you then can feed that back into the model so that the model can then go, hey, good news, your total was 12 hours sleep over the past 4 days, which no one wants. It can do stuff like that.
Thanks, Amy. My question was around like the prompt understanding. Like I like how you're breaking down the prompt to understand context. What if users start asking like the non-usual questions? Like it's not about running or sleeping. So let's say they use a very complicated medicine name and then they want to ask like, what's the impact on my sleep by taking this complicated medicine that the model doesn't know about? How would you go about like these obtuse queries?
Okay. Yes. Not surprised you asked that question. For what I'm building with HealthKitty, it'll just fall over and fail because it's not designed to answer that. How I would try to solve something like that is by training a model itself to interpret and understand that, because all of that stuff is super, super contextual. It also gets very close to providing a diagnosis, which means you then hit situations where foundation models' terms of use say no, you can't do it. And you also, because you're doing stuff around diagnoses, it needs FDA approval. So I would love to try to solve it and develop a model to do that. There are so many barriers there at the moment around regulation and acceptability and all of this stuff that mean, for the moment, foundation models isn't a good idea for solving it.
Any more questions? No. All right. Thanks again, Amy. Carlos, put your hands together for Carlos.
What is my allowed range of motion?
You can go as far as you want,
Oh,
but
yeah?
you need to say something impactful.
Yeah, I go like, yeah. Cool. I'll try my best not to move around. Yeah. I've been told I like do a lot of tap dancing out on stage, so. Oh, have I? Oh, whoops. Has it started? Oh gosh. All right. It's all right. Okay. Hello. Really excited to sort of talk about play with you all today. It's funny because this time last year, I gave a talk, literally on this stage, about designing 3D icons. That was fun. There's a recording up somewhere, I think, but it's also up on, I did the same talk for GDG also last year, so you can sort of catch the recording there. But I'm going all in further into the design process towards the end of the handoff spectrum with prototyping. So there's this tool called Play that I've been using for a while. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I just really love this tool. It's fun. It's been a while since I've used anything like this. And I'll show you sort of where it fits in with how I've been playing with it in my design sort of tool, like toolkit. I should probably also give the caveat that, like, hi, I'm Carlos, I'm a designer. So a lot of this stuff is fairly focused on design. So let's, I guess without further ado, get right to it. That got deep real quick. What is design? It's a lot of, I've been thinking a lot about this question lately, and there's many answers to this, but for the purpose of this talk, I think design is sort of two things. The first is solving a problem. You gotta solve the dang problem. And the second half of that, and I think that's sort of what it comes to skill around design, is, and the craft of design, is taking someone's problem, solving it, but then figuring out how to communicate to other people how to solve that problem. It's a lot of communication in between. Taking what someone knows to taking it to someone who will actually build the darn thing, developers. Here's an example, right? Not affiliated with any company I'm currently working on, but it just so happens to be financial. This is an example of a card detail screen, right? Let's say the problem that you're solving for a customer or a user or just someone out there is you want to see your card details. So you design the screen, show your card, have a button that says show details, or in this case, hide because it's already showing it, and then show the rest of the details on the screen. That's actually one half of the job done as a designer. The second part of your job as a designer is, okay, here's the screen. Now I have to communicate all these details to the people who will actually build it. So annotating, giving specs like, oh, that should show the current card, or that button's like the active state, and the other button should be dimmed. That button right there, it does copying. And by the way, the text should also be selectable. So it's a lot of sort of communicating to whoever will build it that this is sort of how it will work. So you're doing two jobs, solving the problem and communicating that problem and solution to someone who will actually build it. Even to something as advanced like, hey, when I tap on this card, it should do a cool swivelly animation. And that's part of your job as a designer. So the more I think about it, it's like a communication problem, right? How do we actually capture that information? How do we tell someone that we're working with, this is how it should work? This has sort of got me into a rabbit hole, and I sort of call this the design document space-time continuum. And it's sort of this sort of world where towards one end of the spectrum, the idea that you're communicating is quite abstract, and the other end of the spectrum, quite concrete, is very like you're actually almost building the darn thing. For example, you can do napkin drawings. It's very low effort. You can communicate the idea, and you can say, oh, that kind of looks like a banking app. Or you could go all the way, put all your effort into building the darn thing itself, which is as close as possible to, you might as well just write it in code. That's still design, but you're writing it in the thing itself. So it's sort of this continuum of a material. Like, where do you go? What do you do as a designer? Just so much to sort of like, it's a whole world to play in. So many design tools sort of fall around this design document continuum. And the more I think about it, there's this sweet spot right here. I'm calling it the interaction zone. And it's sort of this world where it's close, almost close to almost coding the thing, but the goal is to communicate something really complex with just the right amount of effort to understand how it's supposed to work. For example, like that card swivelly animation, I could do a napkin drawing, but that doesn't really communicate the idea. Or I could be as close as possible to just actually almost coding the thing, and I can show the developer and say, yeah, watch it swivel. It's pretty cool, right? And it's almost that sort of interaction zone that I'm calling it. So what does this actually look like in the real world, this sort of rabbit hole of thinking? So there's this challenge I sort of ran into at work. I changed the accent color so I don't get like copyrighted for this. So it's all green. But there's this challenge I ran into work. And one of the things I was working on was, okay, we have a search box inside the app, but here's a cool thing. You can add more words to the search box, and it's a more descriptive way to search, hinting at large language models, so to speak. So this was the brief that I was given as a designer. And so on top of that, the other requirements I had to design was it had to accommodate for multi-line text, so I could write paragraphs in that little text box, add attachments, so maybe some kind of plus button so I can add photos, and allow room for token capture. I won't get into that too much, but it sort of looks like that thing when you search for something in the Photos app and it detects that it's a date or a location. So that was the challenge I was given at work as a designer. And I kind of fell into another rabbit hole. There's so many variations of text boxes that I designed. In fact, I remember distinctly like one afternoon, I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna design a text box today. And the whole day I was like designing different versions of a text box that started to look like scratchings on a prison wall. Like, when am I gonna get out of here? When am I gonna find the right text box? And the more I designed the text box, I realized like, there's actually so many right answers, and you won't really understand what feels right unless you actually have it in your hands. So I guess the best way to do it is to actually design something where you can feel the text box in your hands. So it looks like a job for the interaction zone. So luckily, there's this tool I found sort of early in the year called Play. You can look it up. It's createwithplay.com, but I'll put a link sort of towards the end. But it's a tool that emerged a couple of years ago with the ambition of it being a design tool in your pocket. It's a crazy idea. You could actually do design on the phone, but they sort of pivoted and eventually released the Mac app and embraced the sort of prototyping interaction side. So I'll show you what that looks like soon. That's Play. Looks like a design tool, right? I'll do a bit of a walkthrough a bit later. But Play is a really powerful sort of somewhere between a design tool and a prototyping tool. So let's dive right in a little bit. What's cool about Play is it's like a design tool. You can like drop elements onto the screen. And what's really cool I love about it is it sort of maps to a lot of Swift UI elements. A lot of the hierarchy stays the same. And I have to double check the website, but apparently it actually uses native views. So when you try and preview the screens on device, it's using some kind of version of Swift UI. I think they're doing some kind of like rendering on their own to make it feel like it's actually native, but it's as close to native as possible because you're almost building it with Z stacks, V stacks, H stacks. It's pretty nifty. But the other half of this is it's a prototyping tool. So this looks like spaghetti at the moment, but this is actually node-based programming. It's pretty cool. The idea is you can make things move on screen by giving it some kind of trigger, connecting it to, you can do a conditional. It's like basic, very basic sort of variables in programming, and then have it change properties based on a particular condition. This is actually what reeled me into Play. It's such a cool tool because I want to see probably a test of like how long I've been in the industry. Does anyone here know origami? Raise your hands if you've heard of a tool called, wow, that's a lot more than I realized. That's awesome. Well, shout out to the origami users out there. Origami was a node-based programming prototyping tool that kind of looked like this too. It was really fun, like just connecting all the sort of nodes together. And if you've used 3D tools as well, they do the same thing. But this was the fun part for me, just being able to make things move with sort of writing some kind of code, but connecting the little sections together like spaghetti. It was really cool. Without me yapping too much, I might actually just show you how it works. And this is probably a bit ambitious, so I haven't actually had to do a live demo on stage ever, but let's see how this goes. So what I'll do first is I'll walk you through the interface for Play. So this is an example. This is Play. This is what I showed you, that screenshot earlier. So the interface is divided into a few sections. So right now, the mode I'm in is in design mode, but you can switch over to the pages of a prototype you're designing. Pretty cool. You can also switch over to seeing the components that you've designed. So for example, buttons, a card, some kind of detail screen, transactions, or the page itself. And you can sort of start to see that this is the main screen I'm working on with a few components that I've sort of been tweaking on the side. And then the sort of hero of the story is the interaction part. So I'm in interaction mode. You can't really see what's happening here, but if I click onto, for example, this button, or if actually I'll jump into a component, and if I click onto this, and I click onto this card, and I hit interaction mode, let me zoom in for a little bit. Let me navigate through the layers. This is an example of a interaction. So right now, this element is detecting what happens in the gyroscope, and if I move my phone around, some cool lighting effect happens. I'll show you this in a bit, what that looks like, but this is an example of creating some kind of interaction inside Play. So let me zoom out a bit. Let me go here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the presentation, and we're actually going to do a live design challenge right now. So let's put myself back into the seat at work with my wall of text boxes trying to design it, see if it actually can be done. And we're going to do it in Play. So we're going to try and build something today with this brief, and our goal is to make something that looks like this. Let me zoom back over. I'm going to close this. I'm going to open my project called Search. Let me wait for that to load, hoping that it works. And yeah. Oh, it looks like I started at the end. Let me just skip over that. All right. So let's just say this is where I picked up my design. Our goal right now is to make it look like this inside Play, right? Right now, it doesn't really look like it. So I'm going to try my best to narrate what I'm doing as I design, and then we'll see how we go. So let's start with the design, and then we'll do the interaction after that. So first, let's put this at the bottom of the screen. There we go. I kind of want it to respect the device safe area. So what I can do is I can have it pinned to the page, so it's always at the bottom. I can go to the padding around this component. Right now, it looks like it's 16 around the edges, but I want it to be sort of at the bottom, have respect to the safe area, which can vary from device to device. So I can hit this and click this toggle, and bam. I don't have to guess what the safe area is. I can just turn that toggle on. We're almost there. Next is, I guess we have to figure out how to make that interaction work. So if I sort of move this over here, what's really cool. Oh man, I've been yapping too much. All right. Is that working? Is that working fine? Testing. All right. No, it's okay. I can drop a sick beat if needed. No, I can do this one-handed. It's all right. yeah. I just need one hand when I design. So right now, this is actually running on my device. I'm being really careful because my cable is going to break. But right now, if I tap this, oh God, the keyboard goes over the thing. That's not supposed to work that way. So let's fix that. I'm going to hit R to reload the prototype. Cool. So let's make it move up based on the keyboard. So here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to go into interaction mode. What I'm going to do is when this is tapped, I want this to, actually I'll change this. I want it to be based on the keyboard, not when it's tapped. So let me open this. Let's type in keyboard. Yep, event device. So when the keyboard shows, I want it to, let's do padding. So I want that bottom padding to increase when the keyboard goes up. So I want the padding of this thing to increase. What's really cool is I can actually use variables, like inbuilt device variables. So I can tap this button. Oh. I can hit plus, and I can do something like device dot keyboard height with input accessory. And then maybe let's give it extra padding for the safe area. Bottom. All right, let's see what happens. So I'm now on my device. I'll hit reload. Let's hope this works. Hey, but it's too high. What I might do is I'll do a bit of tweaking. I'll remove this. And maybe, for visual purposes, just minus an extra 16 points. I memorized all these values just so it would work well in the demo. But if I hit refresh, and then hit that, hey, that's close enough. Ship it. That's all we need. It illustrates the point. But that's like in a few sort of short steps, you can see that I can do a bit of design work in play, but also give it some pretty advanced interactions. And what's really cool is I don't have to hard code all the keyboards about this high and it should move up. You can actually just test this on a different device with potentially a different keyboard height, and it would respect that based on that variable, which is pretty cool. So here's the last thing I'll show as well that's super cool about play. What's really great about prototyping with this. At the top of this is a button for publish. And what's so cool is I can hit publish, hit that button, or I can copy a link. It actually creates an app clip of the prototype that you built. So this is also testing the demo gods today. If you scan that QR code, you can see the result of what we built. Let's see, I want to see how many people actually scan it and like put the phone up to see if it works. It'd be funny if it like links to a different site. It's actually the Rickroll video. So let's see if that works. Unavailable. Whoa! Let's hit publish. Let's hit publish. All right. Let's let it run through. Oh yeah. Let's just pretend that it worked. Did that work? Is it working? No? All right. I got a backup. I'll show the backup later, but the point I was trying to make here was through play, I was able to actually do a lot more iterations inside the tool rather than inside sort of a static design tool, because I could then play around with how it felt in my hands. Because if you're typing something, there's only so many, there's actually so many right answers, and it starts to become subjective. So you start to play around with how it feels and experiment with different versions. Here's the backup I was talking about. So I made a backup version. I made a version of the sort of the debit card thing at the start of the presentation. This is another. It doesn't work. What? The first one worked? Oh, maybe there's like a maximum of like how many people can. Well, if it works on his phone, just saying. Trust me, it works. Or I can just hand around my phone later, and you can play around with it. I swear it works, but the idea is there. Does it work? Ah, see? Yeah, come on, guys. yeah, see? There. Anyways, back to the story. So that's, in my head, I've been thinking about like what it means to be a designer, and our job, like one half of the problem, like the job is to do and solve the actual problem for the customer, for the people, the thing that you're building. But the other half of the job is to effectively work with the team around us, and that's about communicating the work that we do. Otherwise, our designs really aren't going to go anywhere, right? So play is a really good tool. It's a really good tool for being able to communicate a really complex idea, like, for example, app clips that don't work, or in the more practical sense, a keyboard interaction that I've been designing, to something that you can actually start to feel in your hands. So when you hand it off to an engineer, you've already done half the work. They don't have to redo all of that work, and it's a matter, so they can spend more time on other problems that they want to solve. So yeah, that's prototyping with play. I'll open it up for questions. Question time?
Question time, yep.
All right.
We got a few. Should I go to the first person to put their hand up, or should I go? Oh, fuck it. Yeah, I'm gonna go first. I think that's fair, right?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Had a quick question in regards to doing the personas. So when you're designing something, how do you know that you've catered to all the personas or people who are using the app, or like all the user cases? Because I come from a business analyst background, and you can't always cater to everybody. So how do you know that you've done catering for majority of the personas who's going to use the app?
Dang, that's a tough question. This is a job interview. That's a good question, though. Let me think about an answer there. No. That's a good one. Yeah, you can't really design for everybody. My approach might be different to how designers do it, and there's so many right ways to go about it. But the way I have been going about it is I try and start with, okay, what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve? And then from there, who is experiencing the most amount of quote-unquote pain from that problem? Where are the challenges? Who feels like they're really like having a tough time with the problem that we're solving? And that sort of gives you a good indication of who you're trying to target. And then you sort of start to, depending on the approach, you design for the edge cases. What about the people who are experiencing it, but they have a different set of conditions, so on and so forth. For example, more practically, one of the things I got to work on, which is a fun experience, was working on Reveal. And if you think about it, the challenge there is you're designing for developers. Reveal is a tool for helping debug iOS apps. There's so many different kinds of platform developers: iOS, Apple TV, Mac OS. But we chose to sort of hone in on iOS first, because that's where a lot of the problems and a lot of the bulk of the development happen. So that's our sort of smaller set of personas, iOS developers. And then we run into, okay, what kind of problems are they having? Reveal is about debugging views. So we sort of look at the kind of people who are building really extreme views, like crazy view hierarchies, and seeing what kind of problems they're having. And then you sort of work backwards to try and say, okay, this kind of person at this company building this kind of app is having these problems, so on and so forth. So you start with the problem, is the way I'd go about it.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed that. It was a really cool tool. As a developer, probably some of these kind of your designers playing with animations can be quite scary. How do you interact with developers on the other sides? Like, do they have access to this tool, or how do you interact with developers to show them from this design? How does that then interact into actual code?
As in handoff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll try and repeat your question. Where does this fit in the context of developer handoff? I'll be honest, I wish I had a chance to actually use this in practice. This was just me noodling around with it on the side. But the way I see it is two things. One, Play actually has a export to Swift, which is absolutely insane. They have their own SDK actually, and you can I think they're ambitious to you can publish apps with Play. Pretty cool, but never really tried that. But pragmatically, the way I would go about it is sort of treat it like every design tool. At the end of the day, it's a document that's an approximation of how you would design something. So I would show the developer, hey, this is what I think it should work. Of course, there are constraints that I might not know on device, things that might be harder to build or more expensive to build. So I try my best to show this is what I think it could work, but I think design goes beyond the prototype. You want to actually sit next to the developer and go, let's make this with what you know and what I know a better experience. So it really depends.
Thank you.
Hey, Carlos.
Hello.
Gonna be that girl and go, well, what about Android?
That's a good question. I thought this was CocoaHeads second, but that said, there's no Android on the roadmap for Play. It would be really cool. That would be fun to be able to prototype across different platforms. Especially Android has a lot of different, almost sort of their own set of rules and animations that totally different to the way iOS works. Like fabs transforming, or even the ripple and materials, I don't think they're actually doing that anymore. But that would be cool, but doesn't exist yet on the roadmap. I wish there was a way. Yeah.
Okay, maybe last question, unless someone's got one that they want.
You don't let anybody else go. I did ask you a question. Okay.
Hello.
Thanks. How does it fit in with Figma? As a design, how does it fit in with Figma and basically the whole tool continuum? Does it replace it? Does it augment it? How do you think about it?
Good question. More practically, it has a really cool Figma import. So if you're working a lot in Figma, for example, you can sort of connect it to your Figma account, and you can do copy and paste. So you copy something from Figma, from like the browser-based tool, and paste it right into Play, and it will approximate the layouts, the styles, try to do its best with typography, but it's pretty fast. You can actually have a cool workflow, designing something in Figma, and then pasting it over to Play, and you can just purely do interactions, it's pretty fast. But in the broader sense of the tool, you can even just get away with designing everything in Play until another design tool replaces it. You know, it's always changing. That's the fun of it, you know? So, depends.
So just to wrap up, we have one question online. With this sort of tool, how does it go with supporting alternative layouts, like dynamic text sizes, having to wrap, all of that sort of stuff?
I will try my best to answer this live. So let me go into settings. Can someone help me out where to find dynamic type on settings? Where's that? Accessibility, okay. Display and text size. And then, where is that?
Second from the top.
Larger text. All right, let's watch this. Obviously, it wasn't designed that way, but you can see it's really subtle, actually, the more I think about it. Let me try a different example, actually. Point is, Play uses a lot of sort of native APIs. So if I try a different example and do wallet, right? The text size actually increases as well. So you can actually start to play around with sort of edge cases inside Play. That's pretty impressive for a design tool, right? So this is the version of the design we saw earlier, but with larger text. If I go back here and go all the way down, it updates too. That's pretty impressive for a design tool. So yeah, you can do that.
That's all. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
I'm not doing a wheel picker.
Where do I put this? Those are some really fun questions.
Do you still have it? Okay, thank you very much, Carlos and Amy. Awesome talks. One more clap for everyone. Okay. Just a reminder, maybe I should do this one first. I'm going to do oh, no, not that one, not that one. We're going to do this first because, oh, no, not me. I need to find out. There's one hand up. Sajjad Kamal, you have won the ticket to DevFest. Congratulations. Okay. I'm not going to do a wheel picker for one person. I also want to say hi to Neil that I saw at DevWorld and didn't recognize him. So hello, Neil. Sorry, man. You look different in person. He's online every week, every month. So awesome. And the coding night's coming up next week. Steve's going to be there. Looking forward to that. And then CocoaHeads. Oh, Steve's left. Okay. so social night, the last Tuesday of the month. We skipped this DevFest thing. Thank you again to our sponsors, Mantle Group and REA Group. And I think we're wrapping up unless anyone's got anything else to say. Nope. Yep, great. We're going to go to the Mitre Tavern for social time. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And thank you to our speakers.